Hey Ryan, can you hear me?
Hey,
Hey, there we go. How's it going?
good. How are you?
Doing good, man. It's great to chat.
Yeah.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, sorry about the delay. Hit
Yeah,
some
no
traffic,
worries.
but yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting. I saw in the invite, obviously what you were looking to chat about and kind of a good, efficient way to run tracks and make tracks and stuff. But I always love starting with, let's pretend we had 5 minutes. The internet's going to go down at my house. What's kind of the most important thing to you, or and maybe just a little of your history with live and where you are right now and your knowledge of live.
Okay, so I'm pretty much a beginner. I just started using it. Maybe I started working here at this church like 2 months ago, and I've played in the band and I've seen it before, but I've just started being the one building stuff 2 or 3 months ago, maybe. So it's all still pretty new, and it's so far been just figuring out stuff from scratch. And
Okay.
I get it done, but I feel like there's always a more efficient way to do what I need to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
great.
essentially all I'm doing now is downloading stuff from like multi-tracks and then ordering it, mixing it a little bit so nothing's like crazy loud, crazy quiet,
Hmm.
and then just putting it up and routing it so that the sound guy can figure it out. But I want to be
Cool.
able to like make my own loops and make my own stuff, and I'm not sure how to start with that.
Yeah. Um, just a couple questions before we dig in. How many outputs are you running typically right now?
We're running 8.
Eight. Okay, cool. Cool. And then are you running tracks right now in session view, which is vertical, or arrangement view, which is horizontal?
Arrangement.
Okay, cool. Cool. Awesome. Well, here's what I'd love to do. If we can kind of think of this in two parts, well, let me suggest this to you and see if this works for you. And if not, we can kind of adjust. What I was thinking of doing is kind of tackling this in two parts. The first part is just looking at the content you're getting from multi-tracks, how you're formatting that, how to run it in a live setting that's really efficient and saves you time each week. I think
Yeah.
we can knock that out pretty quick. And then the second half of that would be, how do we start to get into you actually creating content? If that works for you, we can do that. If not, we can harp more on just the creating content,
Yeah.
depending on what you're looking to do.
That sounds great. I think a little more focus on creating stuff because right
Okay,
now, like what I have going, I'm sure there's a better way, but like I have a system figured out for
cool.
creating stuff. I'm kind of like completely clueless right now.
Okay. Do you happen to have one of the sets that you use on that machine right now?
Yeah, I can pull
Could you,
something up.
yeah, could you open that up and share your screen? And I'll just take a look at what you're doing and make sure I don't tell you something you already know that you got figured out.
Yeah. So I can just pull up this past Sunday's
Perfect.
stuff for you
Okay.
real quick. Let me just recent set. 422. So you see me?
Not yet.
Oh,
See, there we go.
got it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Cool. So this is kind of what I've been working with. And so we have track listings and tempo for everything up top. Then
Okay.
just if I zoom in there, that's kind of the order of stuff just for my own organizational sake,
Okay.
which are in MIDI and then all the audio tracks we need.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
so right now I'm not plugged into the normal outputs we have.
Mhm.
So I can't actually, like if I go to external out, it only gives me 2 because I'm just using laptop speakers.
Mhm.
So I can't order them right now, and I can't ever do that until I actually. I always save the set list onto a hard drive, and then put that hard drive onto a Mac that we have on stage that's only used for Ableton.
Cool. So, can you go back to your set one more time? Just
Yeah,
one quick question. So, do you guys always have drums live, percussion live, bass, or do you always have the? Okay, yes, actually, I answered my
yeah.
question here.
So that's like a weird thing where I save it and like name these things like what they actually are:
Mhm.
perk, sub bass slash pad, whatever we need for that,
Mhm.
piano, and then when I load it up again, it sometimes changes.
Okay, cool. Cool. Well, a couple things I'll mention here that look really, really good. The tempo, the markers, click. You've got that. That's the thing that's going to help make this really, really easy to use, and it's going to help you keep your sanity in running tracks in Ableton. So that's all really good. And when you're building this, do you open crowns and customize that and then drag from crowns into the set, or are you like dragging content from the song into the set every week?
I pull it up like here. I have it saved. I pull this arrangement, which Reverse Pastor did, and then occasionally, depending on what we need for the week, like I take stuff out or leave stuff in. So right now, I think if I would load it up, it would have the whole like drums live. It would have vocals on that, and I obviously take those out instantly.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Well, let me just show you a couple things that I think will help, and that will just add to that. And again, it looks like what you're doing is really, really good. So let me share my screen here real quick. We'll switch over. All right, cool. Can you see my Ableton session?
Yes.
So one thing I'll say up front that helps me is making a template. So the stuff that I do regularly, the things I find myself doing every week, I make a template and save those. So for example, like song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4. And if you typically only do, 4 songs or whatever, leave your locators in there. And then I just map them to keys on my keyboard, 1, 2, 3, 4. The other thing I do, if you have a MIDI controller, then I go in and just MIDI map, plug my controller in and pre-MIDI map song 1, 2, 3, 4 so that that's set up and ready to go. And then what I do is I save this. So I'll save and call this like Sunday template, right? And then I go in and I format all my songs just like you're doing, same exact way. I make sure it's the same exact order, click, tempo, stop, or whatever your order is.
Yeah.
And then I drag those songs from the browser into this template. Because everything's pre-routed or pre-set to the locators, that saves me lots of time. The other thing that's really important is formatting all your songs the same way, and making sure they're each file has the same exact kind of tracks laid out. And so, for example, if I'm doing click, let's just call this guide, and then stop, all right, and then let's say markers. And having those same tracks in every single one of my files makes it really, really really quick and easy for me to work. A couple things I was going to point out that I think will help for you and what you're doing. One is, let me open up just a song file that I have going here. This is kind of the extreme, or not necessarily the extreme, it's one of the extremes you can go to. But this is the formatting that I typically use, click. And so I'm using a MIDI click. Tempo track, which you've got, guide. This is just the guide that came down with the multi-track. Dynamic guide is just kind of chopped up so we can repeat live on the fly if I want. Stop track, repeat track. Markers is what you had. Two of the things I was going to suggest that I think will save you time each week is one, taking the entire multi-track and grouping it. The only reason I would not do this is if your computer is super, super old and it can't play all the tracks at once.
Yeah.
As long as it can, the benefit of this is what you end up doing is instead of each week going, okay, I need this and drag into this output, I need that. And then you end up with an output that maybe is labeled percussion, but on one it has drums and one it has percussion. What you could do is keep everything really nice, neat, and clean. And then for that week, you build your set and you go in and go, okay, we don't need drums, we don't need percussion, we need effects, I don't need bass, that sort of deal.
Okay.
You do that within that group track. The other benefit of this is you can add the utility device on your group track. Two things with that. One, you can automate a fade out of a track. So you can essentially do a crossfade between song 1 and song 2. And on individual tracks and live, so I could go to the end of this click track here, and I could create a fade out, in Live 10, just grab the handle. But the bummer is I can't do that to multiple tracks at once, at least not yet. So the way around this is you add utility, and then what you do is go into utility, and we want to automate the gain parameter here. So I'm going to go to my device chooser here. Let's fold this up. Go to my device chooser and choose uh, there we go. Choose utility. And then the parameter or control that I want to automate in this case is gain. So we're going to go to gain. And then what I would do is just at the end here, plug in fade out. If I hold Alt Option, or excuse me, Alt Option, you see you can do like curved automation if you want. So essentially you would fade this one out and then do the reverse thing on the other track, which would help. So one, I think that's going to help for me going from moving from dragging from a specific thing into a specific track. This just speeds it up so that everything's together. I customize for that week. The other thing that's going to help, that's especially when you're talking about the outputs, not being able to set your outputs. I used to always route my tracks like one-to-one. So if I had a bass track, I would create a bass track and route, bass to output one, drums to whatever. As I started to do multiple songs, then I would create tracks at the beginning of the set, but I'd have to redo it as I drag content in between. But the trick to save tons of time and to make this really, really easy is to use return tracks. So if you have 8 outputs, you would just insert basically 8 returns. Oops. We'll just do a couple here. And then what I would just name these is like output 1, output 2, and just 3, right? And 4, 5, so on and so forth. So those are my 6 outputs, right? Right now they're all set to master. Then what you can go in and do is you can go into each of your songs here. Let's fold these guys up so they're, I'll just hide them for now. I can go into this group and say, okay, click is always going to go to output 1. My guide, which I think is here, and my dynamic guide, I actually want both of those to go to 1 as well. So I'm going to turn them up, send 1. And then you just go through each of these, let's turn up B. This is all the stuff that's going to go into B. The downside to doing this is you can't, I like routing to a track because you see I'm going to actually send effects to the output or whatever. But the benefit of doing this is you do it once, right? So you route all that. And then the other thing you do, when you go to drag it into your set, your template, that template I made before, as long as that template also has those 6 return tracks, then that routing is going to carry over. So you don't have to every week reroute your audio or route your audio based on the type of content. So you route it once. And then the other big benefit about doing this is everything's going to the sends, but then you go here to the group track and it says audio to master. We want to change that because right now that's going to duplicate the volume and it's going to send our audio to the master and it's just kind of a mess. So you change this to sends only. And when you do that, you now have a master fader for each of your songs. So what I end up with is song 1, song 2, song 3. And then I can go in and say, okay, song 1's a little hot, so let's bring this down. Song 2 is a little hot, bring this down. And that is going to affect the overall level that's going to the sends, which is nice. So you get your separate discrete outputs, that's saved, but then your overall level can be adjusted per song, which is really nice. And the end benefit of doing all that is basically when I get to the end here, I can open up, let's see, I have one of these guys, template example. So I can open up this template. You'll see that the template is set up so that everything is exactly the same. And then I can just go in and drag these songs in. So this is song 1. I'm going to drag it in. And then what I do, let's move this window out of the way here for a second. Then I just take all this content. Since it's all the same tracks, I'm just going to go up here and paste it, right? And this window's driving me crazy. There we go. Get rid of that for a second. And then I'm just going to go down here and delete all of these guys, okay? So I want to make sure I don't have any duplicates of anything. I just have kind of one round of whatever I need. I think this is for test, so let's get rid of that. And then I'm going to press 2 for song 2, move this guy over to here, and make sure it's on a downbeat. And then what's cool is you just go into the next song, drag that guy in. And it's the same exact process. It drops in, and then I'm going to press minus to zoom out, right, and close that guy up. And then select everything. And because everything is pre-mapped, you hit 2, paste it, do that guy, cut it, and then paste up here. And again, as long as everything is exactly the same format, it just drops in the same place. The last bit I was going to say is what I do just to keep everything clean. And this is really nitpicky, but I color code everything so that song 1 is the same color, song 2 is the same color. And what I essentially do is I do that to like the first one. And since we're using 9, we have this cool little trick where I can then go into the track and do assign track color to group tracks and clips, which is going to then change the color of all those. But that helps me so that when I look at the set, and especially as you start to get to like a really massive set, then you can kind of zoom out and see the division of everything, which is really, really nice. And all my MIDI mappings are already there. All my key mappings are already there, which is really cool. The last thing I'll say, and I won't go into this too much, but to just say, if you can get into using the IEC driver, which allows you to basically create a MIDI driver so that at the end of a song, you can choose to either stop or you can choose to like select the next cue, but just wait, and then you just press play. That kind of removes some of the like very hands-on nature, which typically when most people run arrangement view, it's like you press play and you're just on, you're going. Doing that gives you the ability to basically, in this example, I can break this out and go to, let's see, do I have a stop track in here? I don't. So what I would do is just create a MIDI track, call it stop, assign this, just assign a quick MIDI note, and I maybe already have it mapped to C-2. So I'm going to do this. And then wherever I place this clip, because it's routed to the IEC driver, the nice thing is wherever I place this clip, live, the arrangement is basically going to stop at that point, which is really nice. So let's zoom in. Let's say we want it to stop right here. Then as it plays, just turn Live's click on for a second. And then, and that should be channel 16. So let's adjust that. There you go. And now, once we hit that guy, boom, we stop right there, which is really nice. The other thing you could do is create a clip that basically will stop and then select your next locator here. So you just press play to start it again, which is really cool. So I would say go from, instead of individual tracks and dragging clips into those tracks, to me, it saves a lot of time just to group everything, then send the individual outputs of those tracks to return tracks. And then basically and save that so that every time you drag a set over, you never have to redo your routings. Drums always go to the same output. That'll save you tons of time. Using utility lets you do crossfades, and keeping everything together in group gives you that master volume, which is really nice. And then the final thing is adding in the IEC driver will let you do some stop stuff, some cool little things that will save you tons of time. Last question. Before we kind of move on to the next bit, how often in the middle of the set are you guys repeating stuff or jumping around or anything?
Right now we have, so I'm not the one who runs the Ableton tracks. Our drummer actually activates them because he has like a sample pad behind him that's like away, and I'm normally playing guitar or keyboards.
Nice.
So right now it's just a matter of hit the song, hit play, we go all the way with it, and then hit the next one. And so there's really no room for what we have set up now for, say, oh, we want to do this chorus twice, or we want to go do this verse again or something like that. Really can't happen with the setup we have now.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was just going to tell you, if you guys ever want to get into that, you're basically one button away from making that happen. So what's really cool is when you're in arrangement view, and this is one of the misconceptions just because there's a lot of really bad Ableton Live teaching and information out there. A lot of the misconceptions are, okay, you're in arrangement view, you're locked in order to have freedom, you have to chop everything up and bring it into session view, which just doesn't make sense because session is very modular. We're very linear, right? Even if I want to repeat a verse, I'm still going to repeat the verse, but then go to the chorus afterwards. So what's really cool about this is with our locators in arrangement view, all we have to use is this previous locator button, which can be mapped to either R, which is what I personally map it to, which is just like repeat, or on a MIDI controller, you can just map it there. And then what happens is you basically, as you're playing, you would just press play, right? And then by default, we have one measure to make our decision. So I press R and then it would trigger back, which is really cool. But as you saw previously, and I have this repeat, let's see if this is mapped. No, I don't have it mapped yet, but I have this repeat section set up here so that I could really quickly expand this. So let's open this template back up. All I have to do is drag this song in. And which one are we using? Yeah, we use that same guy. So I'm going to open the template real quick and then drag this song in. And when I drop it in here, what's neat about this guy, we'll just take all this content, kind of same deal, just paste it up here. But because I have all these mappings going already, what's neat about this, so repeat, let's make sure we're routed, right? Yep, 16. And you could see repeat right here is assigned to R. So it's turning that on and off. And I'll go ahead and assign it to dynamic guide as well too. And guide. And then what you can end up doing is if I just add, let's just add a couple locators in here for the sake of this example. Right, so just in this small little section here. If I go through and let's get to the interlude, we're playing it. I can hit R here. Actually, let's turn that off. I can hit R while playing. And basically what I did is I triggered this thing that's going to change the guide cue to say interlude again. And then it's going to repeat at the end of this and jump back. So you see it select, well, if it's routed correctly, it would select this locator here. Let's just get it. Yeah, should be good. And what's cool about using the IEC driver, again, all based on using the IEC driver, but the cool thing about doing that, this is why. There we go. Now to do it. So we're set to repeat and it jumps back. And then when I want to disable that, I just press R again, and that goes back to my normal guide cue 1, and then disables that repeat and then just moves on. So the cool thing about setting this up, if you're doing it this way, for your drummer, all there needs to be is just a repeat button. That's all. Yeah. So you would get into it, repeat chorus, repeat verse. If you wanted to, you could extend it to like, again, the next section, previous section, and they could jump around a little bit. But that's kind of nice. So that's like the next step is to add that in. All that takes is IEC driver, adding in some of those clips, and then adding in locators. Cool thing with IEC driver is if you map this button up here, which you can see is mapped to add locator, that's going to automatically add your locators for you, which is cool, which is a kind of next level. But you just drop your set in, press play, it's going to drop all your locators where you need them. So you still have flexibility, which is pretty neat. Any questions about all that stuff? Any other comments or questions, things you ran into?
My whole deal is like, I get what you're saying and why it's beneficial, and it all seems like great stuff. I wouldn't know how to, for example, group a whole song together like you have it, you know?
Yeah, super
like
simple.
Even that kind of basic stuff. I'm sure it is really simple. I just don't know it yet.
So let's take, just because I was looking at this song the other day, this is, let me open it up. I believe this isn't the one. It's the one. Nope, wrong one. Here we go. I believe. Oh, right here. So this is literally the exact session that you get from Multitracks, right? I haven't changed anything.
Yeah.
Click, guide, drums, percussion. Couple things. This is what I do from scratch, right? So one, I'm going to select all of these tracks, and starting with the bottommost one, hold shift, and I'm going to select the top one, and I'm going to hit warp. And what that's going to do is it's going to show me the click track. And then I just want to make sure the click track is lined up with the grid. Now, what I always tell people is if you start to like zoom in, you're going to lose your mind because you're going to like get over precise and just not, it's going to be a disaster. So what I always say, just kind of zoom to like about this level. That looks like it's in time. Check the ending here. If that looks good, right? That looks like it's in time. You're good. Then I'm going to change the warp mode to complex, which is best for full songs, right? And then now I have click, guide, drums, all that stuff. I'm going to keep click and guide outside of my group that I make. I'm going to select everything else, and I'm just clicking on drums. I'm going to hold shift and click on keys. Two ways to do this. I can right click and choose group track, or I can do Command G. And doing that puts everything into a group track. And then I'm just going to rename it. And renaming is Command R, or you can right click and choose rename. And then I'm going to name it the song. Okay. And then to add utility, you can go over to audio effects, go down to utility, and you just want to drop it right on that grouped track. So that means you have access. It's now saved on that group track. For the tempo track, the other thing I do is I have a template that I made that just has all the tempos pre-made. Tempo tracks pre-made for everything. So this song is at 90 BPM. So I'm just going to go in and drag 90 BPM in. Okay. Drag this guy over, pressing minus to really quickly zoom out. And then I'm going to place it where in the set it needs to be. So just the format for me is click, tempo, guide. And I'll just name this so that it looks kind of the same. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So the last piece I would do here, let's save this so we don't lose it, is once I get everything grouped, I've got my click in there, I've got tempo, I've got guide, then I'm going to go in and do my routing. So that's where, and I would, before you even format songs, I would go and make your template first. And I'll show you a trick here in a second. I'll make a note so I forget. So that you'll never save over your template, which is kind of a nice little hack. But I've got all this. So you want to go into your main template as well as all your songs that you format kind of from here on. And you want to make sure you add a return track for every output that you have. So you could go to create and do insert return track, or Command Option T. So let's say we have 4 outputs, and then we just want to name it, 1, 2, 3, 4. By default, your audio is routed. Right now, I've just got audio routed to master, which is perfect because you come home or you're at the office, you just want to mess with your tracks and then hear everything out of whatever your master output is. Once you get to church and set up the interface, then you could go to external out and route 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And last piece with that, in order to send something to that, then you just go, just like any other DAW, turn the send knob up, which is going to send that track to the return track. Final bit on the main output for the group track where it says audio 2, make sure that's set to sends only.
Okay.
Oh, my computer is freezing a little bit. Oh, there we go. Choose sends only, and doing sends only, again, keeps you from duplicating the volume, but still gives you the control over the master output of that song.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the cool thing too, I'm recording all this, so you'll get a recording afterwards that you can go back and reference.
Awesome.
Just to make it easy. Yeah. So that kind of helps. Any other questions kind of in the running track space, or any issues you found, or?
Not issues necessarily. I like the part about having that kind of repeat built in.
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of go more in depth with that about, like, if we do want to repeat a course, having that ability, like you showed me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how that was set up. I saw what you had it now, but.
Yeah. Well, let's do, let me show you 2 other things, and I think we'll still have plenty of time to get into making your own tracks. But let me show you 2 other things. One, how to set up the IEC driver, how to set up the stop marker, which I think is going to be really beneficial, especially if you're a drummer. And then we'll talk about how to do the repeat thing. I'll show you the basic steps, but I'll move kind of quick. Just 1, because I'm recording it, and then 2, I'll send you a follow-up video that I did a long time ago that is a little more in detail. But I think with both of those, you'll be able to get it. But let me show you the basic idea IEC driver, how to set it up. We'll look at stop, we'll look at repeat, if that works.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Cool. One other thing I'm going to show you that just is a helpful thing for me is let me save this guy. So when you go to make that template, and basically for me, the template is I do all my audio routings. I save my locator mappings, my MIDI mappings for keys, all that stuff into one file. And then each week I build my set, take from the songs I formatted and drag into that set, which is really, really nice. But one of the things, I'm really dumb, and I would always build my set and save over the template. And then I'd have my songs from last week in my template that I don't want. So one of the kind of tricks I figured out pretty early on, let me go to Finder and show you this. Desktop here. And let's check it out. Okay, so Sunday template. So, and I'm assuming this is quite an assumption, but I'm assuming you're using a Mac for running tracks. Is that right?
Yes.
Perfect. Good. As any good musician should be. So right click on this guy. Then you want to go to Get Info. And then under Sharing and Permissions, for my name, for your admin, whatever your admin name on that computer is. Right now it says Read and Write. Just change it to Read Only. Okay. And then I'm going to open the template. Nice thing about this is you drag your set in, you go to hit, let's delete this guy. I go to hit save. Actually, let's do this, and I didn't save it. 1 second. All right, so let's change it to read. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna lock it back down, and let me open it again. Okay, so do that again. Building my set, I go to delete. Perfect. I hit save. Keep saving for me. Actually, yeah. So don't do it while the file's open, or it's going to keep doing what I'm doing. All right. Let's make sure it's saved. Read only. There we go. Lock it down. And open it up. Oh, weird. It keeps changing it. I've never had it do that for me. Well, in theory, you can change this to read only. And basically what that does is it doesn't allow you to save over, because you every time you do the template, you want to do a save as, so that you save for that Sunday, for that weekend, as opposed to writing over your template. If you're not dumb like me, then you can just remember to do that. But it's weird. That always works. I don't know if it's something new with that version of Live or what. But anyway, so that's just a kind of pro tip thing that has helped me a lot. Let's talk about the IAC driver and repeat track real quick.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'll send some videos over that will help extend that. So the IAC driver, in theory, what it stands for is not in theory, in actual life, it stands for Inter-Application Connectivity Device. And basically the way to think of it is it's like a virtual cable that allows you to connect two programs on the same machine. So if you've got Ableton and you've got ProPresenter on the same machine, and you want to automate slides from in ProPresenter, you would use the IAC driver to route MIDI from Ableton into ProPresenter. Okay. And the cool thing is it's built into every single Mac. So kind of one of the hidden gems of every single Mac is if you go into Spotlight and search for Audio MIDI Setup and hit Enter, it's going to take you into Audio MIDI Setup. It's the first time you've ever opened this, then what you're going to see is this, right? You'll see all your audio devices. So what you can do is go up to Window and so you would typically see this. You can go up to Window and do Show MIDI Studio. You're going to see every MIDI interface you've ever connected to your computer. So it's going to look like pure chaos, like this basically does now. But the other thing here is you have IAC driver and network. Network is kind of the same thing as IAC, but it's meant to send MIDI from one computer to another computer. So it's different machines. IAC is the same. So all you do is double click this guy. Very, very simple. Just click this box to make sure it says device is online. You can give it a name, IAC driver bus 1. You can have multiple buses, which is basically like instead of one cable, I'm going to connect 2 cables or 3 cables or 4 cables, whatever. But just to start, enable it. By default, it will have one bus and it should have a name. If for some reason it doesn't, just edit that and change it. And that's kind of it. So once you close or set that guy up, let's close this window. And then in Ableton, you just need to make 2 settings for this to work. And you only, you have to do this once for every machine that you ever are going to load the set on. But once you do it, you're done. You never have to do it again, which is cool. So set up IAC driver. like we looked at in audio MIDI settings. And then you want to go into Live's preferences, which is up here in the Live menu or Command comma.
Yeah.
And then you want to go to MIDI. And basically for every MIDI device we have an input and an output, kind of obviously we know that. But what we want to do is we want to be able to send MIDI out of a track in the Live to the IAC driver, back out of the IAC driver, back into Live. We basically want to create a MIDI clip to control a function in Live the same way your drummer hits play or stop on their drum pad to start and stop songs. So for output, the only thing we need to have enabled, so I'm going to go to output here, IAC driver bus 1. I just want to enable track. That's going to allow me to send MIDI notes out of Live, out of the IAC driver. And then the only thing I want enabled on the input of this is remote. And basically what that means is I want to remotely control Live. Quick Live 1.0 knowledge, track means I want to track or record MIDI notes with this controller. Sync means I want to sync Live to this MIDI controller for tempo, for play arrangement, playhead arrangement. Remote means I want to remotely control Live from this MIDI controller. So if you ever plug in a new foot controller, a new drum trigger, and it doesn't work, go to the input of that and enable remote, okay? And then once you do that, we just need one MIDI track. So you can do Command-Shift-T to create that. You can also go up to the Create menu to create your MIDI track. On the MIDI track, we have this MIDI 2 section. So right now it's set to no output. I'm going to go here and select IAC driver, bus 1. And then each bus, each kind of, everything that's MIDI has 16 possible 16 possible channels. For me, for now, I'm just going to leave this to channel 1, but it could be channel 1 through 16. The one thing I'll mention is as you start to get into this, especially if you ever get to where you want to pull up presets on your drummer's trigger pad, if you want to send delay to your Eventide or to your your delay pedal, you want to call it presets on your Nord, you're going to be sending MIDI different places. Just make sure each device has its own MIDI channel, and IAC driver would be a separate MIDI channel in that. So IAC driver bus 1, channel 1, you want to make sure monitor is either set to, or monitor is set to auto in this case, because we want to send out the MIDI on a recorded clip. So last piece of this, or last two pieces rather, is we need to create a MIDI clip. Since we're in Live 10, we can double click in arrangement view to create a clip. If you're in session, you double click, same thing to create a MIDI clip, which is nice. Then I'm going to just scroll down. Whenever I do stop, I always use the bottom MIDI note, C-2, but you can use whatever note. Double click on the piano roll to create a note. And then this is just purely personal preference for me, but I drag this the entire length of the clip. And that's just so that I see a note the entire length of that clip that I created. And I'm going to zoom in here and just name this clip Stop. Okay. And then the very last step you need to do is basically MIDI map that clip to the stop button. Super easy to do, especially in arrangement view. I'm just going to start playback a couple measures before that clip. So let's start measure 11. I'm going to do Command M, which is MIDI map mode. And then I'm just going to click the stop button. Going to wait a second. And you'll see what it did is as soon as it hit that position in the arrangement, hit that clip, it's going to send that MIDI note, which gets assigned to the stop button. Okay. And then when I play it now, boom, the arrangement stops. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let me show you one other piece that will make your drummer very happy. So right now on the drum pad, do you basically have like play, stop, and then each of the songs assigned?
We have play, stop, and then 6 different things. So we normally have 4 songs. Occasionally we'll do like the first half of a song, have a long pad kind of going throughout it for like an offering or some announcement thing, and then finish the song. So just have like 10, 15 minutes of just the pad or whatever, just to give us plenty of room. Yeah. And then with 5, and once he does that, then it'll go to the second half of the song with cues and everything.
Perfect. So let me show you one other thing, and then we'll really quickly look at the repeat stuff. So this is the stop marker, right? And this just basically means what it means, which is we're going to stop the arrangement.
Yeah.
The other one that we could add that your drummer will come up and kiss you right on the lips on Sunday if you start to implement this is do another MIDI track, and we're just going to call this I call it song select, which obviously is already taken in the worship world, but it's going to work. And then we've got these two locators. Let's add one more just for the sake of this. We've got song 1. I'm going to do song 2 here, song 3. And I'm just going to duplicate these clips. One kind of pro tip that helps speed up time. When you select a clip, hold Alt Option and drag. And when you do that, that duplicates the clip, which is really nice. Yeah, it's really small, but huge step that saves a lot of time. So basically the way this is set up, at the end of song 1, stop. At the end of song 2, stop. But in your setup, this is great, but your drummer would still stop. You have to hit 2, play, right? Which is not the end of the world. We want to set it up to where he just hits play. So what we're going to do is create another MIDI clip. I'm going to make this a measure. And then I'm going to go down here. I'm just going to pick C3, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and save this as song 2, okay? And I'm going to duplicate this, that same Alt Option thing, and I'm going to make this song 3. I'm going to move this, move up the MIDI note just one step. So I got C3, C#3. I'm going to temporarily mute the MIDI track, or the one for stop. And then what I'm going to do is assign song 2 to locator 2, song 3 to locator 3. So I'm going to go here and do IAC driver. All right, I'm going to keep that routed. Then I'm going to jump back in the arrangement, do Command M, and I'm going to wait just a second till we get within, right? And then hit that locator, and it gets assigned to song 2. Okay. And then I'm going to jump ahead to here, click locator 3, all right? And that gets assigned to song 3. I'm going to hit save. Now, the cool thing about this is you only, again, have to do this one time. So 2 things I'll show you real quick. The stop clip that I assigned is going to get moved over into session view and saved. And we'll talk about why in just a second. And then we're going to add song 2 and song 3 into here. We're going to reuse these every week. And then what we want to do is go to, in my mind, is the least used function in Ableton Live when you are doing what we're doing, which is using tracks for playback, which is this track delay button, bottom right-hand corner. In arrangement views, just the D. It's in all our show hide buttons.
Is this the same in Ableton 10? Are you using 9 right now or 10?
I am using 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So,
just
yeah, bottom right-hand corner in arrangement, and then in session, it's just up a little bit. So you could do it kind of in either place. But yeah, the D down here in the bottom right. And when you enable that, that gives you this, this option to delay when the note sends. Just basically a track delay. It's meant to compensate when you're recording and dealing with stuff. I've never once had to use it, but it comes in handy for this trick. So what we're going to do is just delay this by a couple milliseconds. I think by default, I normally do like 20 milliseconds or higher. And then what we're going to do is we'll start our set normal. I'll press 1. I'll press play. Let's jump ahead for the sake of time. Right, so we're playing. We stop. Oh, actually remember to unmute your stop track. That helps so you actually stop. All right, so let's try it again. We're playing, we stop, and you see it pulls up locator 2. So let's pretend your drummer is crashing cymbals. He reaches over, hits play. Song 2 starts, right? And then we'll jump ahead for the sake of time. Song 2 ends, right? Crashing cymbals, press play. Song 3 is selected. So what's really nice about that is basically your drummer then has to just worry about play.
Yeah.
And you
that makes life so much easier because they've hit the wrong track before and we had to go without backing tracks, and I had to be like, okay, this is what the tempo is, here's where we go.
Yeah, and that's always a fun situation. I always tell people 99.9% of the time for me, the issues I have are not Ableton. It's always me. I'm the dummy that triggers the wrong song or doesn't.
95% of computer issues happen between the monitor and the chair. So
that's right. Yeah, I always like to say that. Or as we call it at work, ID10T errors. I don't know if you've ever said that.
Oh, I've heard that, yeah.
So that's a really big one for me that saves time and that helps. Let's look at the repeat thing, which is a little more involved. Again, I'm going to move pretty quick just because it takes a bit, but it's recorded, and then there'll be another video I share to kind of reference. So essentially what repeat does, let me explain it, and then I'll do it really quickly, is we're going to use the same concept, and let's just set it up here. We're going to do the same exact concept that we've done for stop clips, but we're going to set it up so that, let's pretend this is the verse, this is the chorus, oops, and this is the bridge. Okay. And what I'm going to do is in the last measure of each of these sections, I'm going to create a clip, and I'm going to call it repeat. Okay. And then I'm just going to create a note. I'm going to go all the way up G8. Same thing, drag it the entire length. And then I'm just going to duplicate this. All right. And I'll add a locator there. And then just for the sake of this template, I'm going to go do a new track. And I'm going to paste this so that I have it saved. And I haven't showed you yet. The importance of doing this is then when you go to format each of your songs, you can drag from this template into those, which I'll show you how to do that here in a second. I'll make a note. Remember, show you how to do that here in a second, which is going to save tons of time. Let's move all these guys down. Again, we just need to make sure our routing is set. And then what we want to do is we want to MIDI map this repeat note to this next locator button.
Okay.
So let's go back to here, press play, really quickly hit that. And yeah, so it's mapped. Previous locator, we see it up there. And then what we're going to do, instead of assigning, and like I mentioned, I typically would assign, do key assign and assign this to R. The downside to this is what I mentioned earlier, is it's tied to a measure. So I hit R, it goes in that measure. That's okay, but especially when you have a drummer, the worship leader singing, they say, let's sing that, or you give the signal, let's do the chorus again, but you're 2 measures in. The drummer's going to have to think like, okay, wait,
Right.
1, 2, right.
Measure, yeah.
So we don't want to do that. So the trick with this is when we assign the R to the repeat button instead of previous locator, by default, turn repeat off, right? R is mapped to repeat. And then what we can do is we get into this section, hey, let's repeat that one more time. I hit R, which enables it, triggers repeat, and we go back. What's cool too is this just keeps looping until you're ready to get out of it. So in the case of the pad you were talking about earlier, to save you the 10, 15 minutes of your set, and you can only really do this either by adding a reverb to your audio track if you have an audio pad, or loading your audio pad onto a MIDI instrument or drum rack so that it loops cleanly. But you could basically have your pad set to be a measure, right? And it's going to keep looping. It's going to keep looping. And then whenever the worship leader says, you know, let's sing this song or whatever, you let go and it goes into that song, which is cool. So that for me is really nice to just pre-program those segments of the song that are going to loop and loop and loop till you're ready to go on, which is cool. And you guys, you're using guide cues, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I make the cues from like their MIDI.
Okay.
And I just see what we need and then make it from there.
So this is really great. You're going to implement it. Everything's going to go amazing. And then what's your worship leader's name again?
Jonathan.
Yeah, that's right. So he's going to go, what about the guide cues, right? Because you're repeating, they're saying do chorus, but you hear bridge. So really, really simple way to solve that. And I'll just kind of fake it with, actually, I have guide cues right here. So stand by, edited cues, is this it? Nope. Guide key template, yeah, here we go. And I think this is actually MIDI as well too. There we go. So if I was doing, the way this would typically work, right, I would have verse here in that last measure. Okay, so that's a measure. Another thing, actually, if you haven't figured this out yet, you can adjust how you view Live's grid. You've probably seen me do this a few times. I never have it set to adaptive grid. I always leave it set to 1 bar so that I can see a measure before, a measure after, how many bars it is. That saves me so much time just in doing what I did there, so you're not second guessing, and it snaps to the grid, which is cool. So what we should do in this section, right? Let's just load these in. Chorus cue happens before the chorus, obviously. Bridge cue happens before the bridge. And then whatever, let's say drum solo. It's never going to happen. But let's say that happens for the next section. So these are our normal guide cues. What you want to do is duplicate your channel. You can do the same thing with MIDI. These are MIDI. And you want to call these, I call them dynamic guide cues, but you can call it whatever it is. Just duplicate a channel of that. And then what you want to do is place the guide cue for the section you're in at the end of that. So instead of chorus here, and the trick for me is I just nudge, the actual trick, select all these.
And drag them over one,
Yeah, you just do 2 guys over, and then now you have them in place. And then that same R command that we mapped, I'm going to go in and map it to guide cues, and I'm going to map it to dynamic guide cues. The trick here is use what I call it a flip track, but basically turn off repeat, turn off dynamic guide, so that if everything goes to plan and you leave everything running, you'll hear, well, don't do that. You'll select song 2 somehow. Oh, I must have used, anyway, I must have mapped the chorus guide cue. Let's do verse or something. Chorus must be mapped to song 2, the same MIDI note, right? So that's verse. Let's just, for the sake of seeing it, call it chorus. It would say chorus, but then I'm going to hit R. And when I do that, it's going to enable repeat and enable dynamic guide and turn off my regular guide cues. And then it plays, and then you hit R. It switches back over, goes into chorus, and then you're going to hear, oh, let's do R. Oh, and there it goes, triggers that same note. But basically,
so by default, does it keep repeating?
It does.
Okay.
There's a way to, in one of the videos I'll send you, I think the video I'm going to send you is the very day that I figured out how to do this years and years ago. The way I set that up is I set it up to where basically I could either infinitely loop a section or just loop. And I, by default, wanted it just like when I hit repeat, it means repeat one time. If you want to do that, then, and you'll see this in the video, what you do is you add an extra step, and this gets crazy. Super simple though, but it's crazy. You add an extra step here and you assign a MIDI note. I'll show you what this looks like. You basically assign a MIDI note to, oh, there's so many MIDI things, right? There's no chance I get this right. Basically, you assign a MIDI note to the on-off for repeat. And so you just keep repeating, and then when you disable repeat, it toggles that thing so that at the end of it, it turns repeat off. So that essentially repeat happens one time, and then you could have the option to do an infinite repeat. Since then, for me, as I've used this over the years and kind of iterated on it, what works a little better for me is just, and it's simply because I'm running tracks and I'm managing it, I just know if I want to repeat, it's going to keep repeating till I disable it.
Okay.
So you'll see in the video, there's a couple different ways to do it. I think the first way I did it initially is a little convoluted. I think this is a little more straightforward. But
it seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the only downside of this is it takes your drummer knowing, okay, we're not repeating anymore, disable. But the benefit is you have, you basically have up until the last measure to do that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of it. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Sorry, go ahead.
One quick question is, just because I doubt we're going to need to repeat anything more than once.
Yeah.
Is there a way other than what you showed me just to by default have it just go and then go back, or is that what you were just?
Well, yeah. So the video I'll send you is what you're wanting to do.
Okay.
And I make it sound like it's more complicated. It's not that much more complicated. But now that you'll see this, then you'll see the video and you'll probably go, oh, I get what he's saying. But what you'll see will show you how to make it just go once, which is cool. And one thing on that point, I was talking with a band probably about a year ago, and they wanted to set up, they were trying to do a deal where at the beginning of a song, they've got just like a looping song section. They want to intro a guide cue, or they want to teach the congregation a chorus. And then when they're ready to go on, they want to hit a button, takes them on to the rest of the song. So I essentially showed them everything I'm showing you. They said, this is great. And then it's kind of like, as we're talking, they go, well, the downside to this is the keyboard player, every time we get on stage, is going to have to make sure this cue is set to the right thing and then disable it, and move on. I said, well, not necessarily. So I took them kind of the extra steps and showed them how to do that. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, and the cool thing, that video is going to show you exactly step-by-step how to do that, which will solve that for you, which is cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other tracks and earlier I said issues you're having. I'll even rephrase that to say things you're currently doing that you wish you didn't have to do.
Well, you showed me the main thing is saving routings beforehand, so I don't have to actually route everything right when I get to the computer, but that's great. Nothing I'm doing is I hate doing it. I just know there's probably a faster way, and you showed me a lot of quick things. So right now it's just prep work and setting up all the tracks already, and making my templates. And then once I get that done, then it's super easy from there on out.
That's
Yeah,
great. That's
cool.
great.
But yeah,
And
this has been fantastic.
oh, and let me show you. I know what I was going to do. So I'm going to save this template real quick. The last bit I was going to show you, and you may already know how to do this. So the reason I'm making this template and I keep dragging everything is into Session is when I get a song from Multitracks, I download it. Whether it's something I purchased or even a song I made on my own or just even a click track or a pad or whatever. Again, for me, it's really important. Everything's formatted exactly the same way. Tracks are the same order. Otherwise, you will spend hours doing the same thing over and over. But I format everything the same way. And the reason I do that is so that I can go in and open up. We'll go back to Lion of the Lamb, just like it is by default. I could go in and really quickly just crank through stuff, right? Format this, like we said, do that for the sake of time. But then I'm going to go into that template that I made, and I called it Sunday template. So I'm going to go down here to in the browser. And working, the other kind of nice thing, working from the browser as opposed to Finder just saves you so much time.
Yeah.
So what you do is expand it, expand the live set, and then you'd see, okay, here's my stop marker. So I can just go in and drag stop in, and that's going to drop right into place. I don't need to map it in this set because I'm going to drag this set into my template. And then you could do your repeat stuff and go, okay, I need to repeat after every section here. So we're set to 1 bar. And then what I can just do is just drag repeat. It's going to snap to the grid, lock into place. And then like we talked about earlier, all I'm going to do at this point is just Alt Option and just move all these guys over. Same thing with your guide cues, all that stuff. So saving into session view is the thing that unlocks the ability for you to see the clips and drag them over, which is really nice. Same thing with guide cues. You could see in the that template I was working from when I open, I keep losing whatever that was. When I open that guy up, I don't know why I keep losing it. Anyway, when I opened that guy up, everything was in a drum rack. It's all MIDI, which is probably what you were doing. But I just dragged MIDI clips in just like that, which is going to save you tons of time.
Cool.
Awesome. So a couple minutes that we have left. Let me give you some pointers to get you going in the right direction for creating your own stuff. Before I do that, just a real quick question. What are the types of sounds you're imagining in your mind that you'd like to create? What are the, is there a particular artist that you like this, or you're thinking primarily pad sounds or this, and we'll record guitar, that sort of stuff?
Mostly ambient, some guitar stuff, some basically leads, just something like never a specific part that I want to be like the main thing, but more ambient parts around it, or like a really reverbed out key sound that matches like the normal keys or guitar lead, just to add to that. Yeah. So it's all secondary stuff that I want to add, but I want to do that on my own instead of having to download it from whatever.
Perfect. Okay, so let me show you. This is literally if again the internet goes down in 3 minutes and this is the only sound you can ever create, it's going to be the only sound you ever need. Let me stop my screen share and then reshare so that you can hear my audio. 1 second here. All right. So let's try this again. So I'm going to open a new live set. And you're using Live 10, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So I've said this multiple times. You can see it documented on social media. I think Live 10 is a major improvement to the built-in. And are you using standard or suite?
I'm using standard.
Standard. Okay. Well, bummer. You can't use the instrument I was going to show you to use, which is Wavetable, which is included in suite. But I'm going to go ahead and show you anyway. But
can you buy Wavetable without buying the whole suite?
You can. You should be able to now. I know when they announced it, they said you'd be able to. If you could do that, I 100% would do that, and it should be like $100.
Yeah, I can get that probably.
Yeah,
I was looking for it when it came out, and I didn't see it, but
yeah. So including a Live 10 suite, and then I'm probably seeing that because I'm on suite. But if you go to this page, and check that out, you should be able to purchase it. Okay. But what I show you is going to work no matter. Actually, I'm not going to show you with Wavetable, then I will, so that you see it. So the basic idea for creating ambient stuff and kind of filler pad stuff, which is most of the pad stuff we want to use in a worship context, is it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but you want to start with the brightest sound you can start with. The cool thing is anything, any type of sound typically will work. What I've found when I'm just creating pads and making pads, I try to find sounds that complement each other. And I try to find like a bass sound, not B-A-S-S sound, but B-A-S-E,
Yeah.
kind of this one. And then I add some sort of motion to it. So I'm going to use stuff that you would have. So I can go into sounds here. And what you could do, there's two ways to look at this. You could go into pad, which is going to give you, any sorts of pads in Ableton. I'm just going to find one, and I don't know if you'll have it or not. That isn't necessarily, and this is wavetable, so you won't have it. But so I'm going to play it though. Not a great, it's not a bad pad, but it's not really what we want for worship typically.
Yeah.
Two things, if you add them, are going to make anything sound usable. So one is reverb. So we're going to go to audio effects and go to reverb. Live's reverb is amazing. I love the sound of it. I love what you can do. A couple features are the key things to make this sound patty. So under quality, I always change this to high. You could leave it set to economy, which uses less CPU, but I leave it set to high. Decay time, I'm going to increase. Okay. And then dry wet, I'm going to jump all the way up to wet. And that's just because I don't want the sound of this with it. I mean, you're a guitar player, so you get this, but I want, the reverb plus that to be the sound.
Yeah.
So now when I play it, start to sound better. You're going to hear a little bit of detuning, which comes from the chorus. And you can increase that, which is going to thicken it. Spin sometimes. If you hear, there's like a weird kind of high pitch thing. If you disable spin, you're going to lose that, but you lose some of the texture. So what I typically do is leave spin on and just turn it down slightly. If you need to thicken the pad, chorus is, and even though there's chorus here, which sounds redundant, if you go and add the chorus device, right? It's going to add some detuning. Echo, which is included in 10, is awesome at adding some space and to it. One of my favorite things, and I said two effects, and then here I go down a trail. I'll get back to the other very essential one, is pedal, especially as a guitar player. Basically, this is a tube screamer, this is a rat, this is a fuzz face.
Okay.
But for me, one of my favorite things, I'm team tube screamer. I always have my tube screamer gain turned all the way down. And that's like my default. And then I'll stack drives, which I know most guitar players aren't a fan of, but I am. So when you just play this, you can hear it kind of cuts some of the high end, and it adds this almost kind of analog nature to it. So this is without. This is with. I personally like that, which is kind of nice. The final thing to this, and if you cut out pedal and you cut out chorus, add reverb, and then the last thing you want is auto filter. Oops, not audio effect, right? Auto filter. And then you want to have it set to low pass so that you cut the highs and let the lows pass through. And just bring the frequency down. So as I play, right, you start to get kind of more of that ambient sounding pad. You could put the filter before the reverb. The thing I like about that is as you make adjustments, they kind of hit the reverb, and it's basically, I mean, as a guitar player, you get it. Serial processing, everything affects everything. So in front of reverb, and you kind of hear it die off if you bring that down, which is nice. So I typically will put auto filter before. One of the nice things about Wavetable, and I am using Wavetable here, is you have this built-in unison, which is going to basically almost duplicate it and then detune it slightly is kind of how you get unison. But there's a shimmer built into this. And this one's set pretty low so you can't hear it. The other trick and way to get this in live is if you go to grain delay. And I'm going to put the grain delay post pedal and chorus, but pre-auto filter. And that's kind of the key to make this sound good. And definitely pre-reverb as well too.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring frequency down. I'm going to bring pitch up to 12. Dry wet up to 100%, and bring the delay time to 1. And with all that set, now we can play. It's going to take a second to catch, but you hear kind of that shimmery thing. putting that pre-filter and pre-reverb kind of is what makes it work.
Yeah.
The last bit to this, and this to me, a lot of people don't talk about, this is the thing that makes all this kind of work for me. I select all of them, and then I'm going to group them. So Command G, just like we grouped the track, but this now puts them all in an instrument rack. And the way to make this playable and usable in a live setting, if you want to do that, but we're still talking about creating instruments, but I want to basically create this and say, great pad, hit save, right? And the next time, I already named something great pad. We'll call it great pad 2. And it's saved now. Next time I can go and open a new live set, and then all I have to do is drag great pad 2 in. And I'm going to get all those same settings, which is awesome. The thing you could do too, you see all these macros. So 8 macros, we have options to map. What I typically do is would go through and map specific parameters, specifically frequency for the filter, decay for the verb, and then I'm going to map the shimmer, so the dry wet for shimmer. And all I'm doing is right-clicking, and then you see map to, right? And then now I go back over here and I have all those settings. I can rename. Decay time is going to stay up like this. I could do whatever pedal. The other thing you could do that I like doing, if I map pedal gain here, then what I get now, right, so there's that. I can bring shimmer. And then to make it, you can surprisingly do this with ambient stuff and get by with it, but you can crank the gain up super high. Right, and it just kind of builds tension as opposed to like really overdriving it. In reality, if the frequency is all the way up and the reverb's down, it's overdriving the snot out of it. But in essence, that to me, like if you're just looking for a really quick pad, that's how you go for it. That's how you make it happen.
Okay.
Let me show you one other thing that I think is beneficial, kind of using some of the same concepts, and then we can wrap up. So if I go to sounds, and let's say you're talking about a lead kind of thing. Let's say I just want to use a piano, and I'll use the default grand piano that comes it's included in Ableton. So we'll drop this guy in. When I play it, like worst sounding piano ever, and it's pretty awful. But what I'm going to do is add a reverb. Okay, I'm going to do all the same stuff we were doing before: increase decay, increase dry wet, set this to high. The downside though now, kind of a cool pad ish, but I lose all the piano. So the trick for me here, instead of bringing dry wet down, right, what I'm going to do is click on the reverb and hit Command G, which is going to group it into, instead of an instrument rack, it groups it into an audio effect rack. So basically we put this like it is in a rack. And then I'm going to right click here, right where it says drop audio effects here. And I'm going to do create chain, but I'm going to leave it blank. So essentially what I have is a wet chain and then a dry chain. So now when I play, right, and the spin definitely sounds pretty funky on piano, so we'll bring that down. So I get this really verbed out sound with lead on, or with piano on top of it.
Yeah.
For piano, glue compressor is going to give you the really over compressed, just compress the snot out of it kind of sound that everybody likes. You could also go in and add grain delay, do some different things. But one of my favorite things to do, so that's kind of to create a somewhat playable piano just from Ableton stuff. Last thing though for me, especially for lead stuff that I like doing, is I'll put pedal on here and I will gain it up just all over the place, make it crazy. Echo with a dotted eighth delay is really nice. So by default it's dotted eighth. I'll unchain that and make one, typically 8 notes and then 1 dotted eighth. Lead feedback where it is, take character and increase the wobble. So it gives it kind of the tape sound, which is cool. And then let's kill this effect rack for just a second. And I'm just going to add a reverb, dry wet all the way up, kind of decay here. Now, maybe a little too out of tune what we're looking for. But starting to gain stuff up, kind of gets us there a little bit more. You could decrease wobble if it's too much. That kind of helps for me, using piano in that way for lead stuff definitely helps cut through the mix. Sometimes better than even just a synth does. But as you go through and look through some of the presets, I think you'll find some stuff that works really well, even just in standard. Again, if you get Wavetable and get Suite, you're going to love it. And the sounds you'll be able to get out of it are crazy. So, but yeah, hopefully that's enough to kind of get you cranking and going. And yeah, cook on that stuff and let me know if you have any questions and see how all that works. But hopefully with those tweaks, your drummer is going to thank you and going to make their life a whole lot easier.
Even the simple stuff, just like adding stops, is huge.
Yeah. It's always, to me, it's always the simple stuff I think that makes such a big difference, especially when doing track stuff. So good stuff. Well, thanks for your time, Ryan. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And if not, I'll hopefully talk to you again here soon.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you for everything, man. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
All right, bye.